Hey everyone, welcome to this review of TNA iMPACT, the pre-impact to sacrifice this Sunday, and I guess you could say it was a very historical impact if you're a true TNA fan. And what I mean by that is a lot of things took place tonight that were already talked about throughout the week. Now, in case you didn't listen to the spoilers or read the spoilers, and you're just a non-spoiling wrestling fan and Mark that just wants to be surprised, well, you probably were surprised tonight with iMPACT. Basically, we start off tonight with a promo by the Jarretts, Karen and Jeff. Basically, again, it's I guess you could say, an attempt to call a truce, if you will, with Kurt, to call this whole thing off. But Kurt's not buying it, and he tells them that the match that was originally going to be him and Jeff as sacrifice is going to be Jeff and Karen against him and his mystery partner, his mistress, his business associate. So anyway, after that we get a Knockouts tag team match. Now I didn't see the Knockouts tag team match that much, but I did see that Mickey and Miss Tessmacher win the match over Madison Rain and Tara. Now the only question is, TNA going to pull the trigger and split Tara and Madison apart, or are they going to save that for Slammiversary? If I was, TNA, I might want to save it for Slammiversary, have Tara be the one that wins her freedom back, but we'll see what happens. Then I think we had a backstage segment, I believe, with Flair and Hogan and Bischoff. Hogan, as soon as Flair walks into the door, walks in the office, Hogan gets right on him about saying, hey, you're the ones behind it. Basically Hogan is flabbergasted right now. He doesn't know what to think. He's just basically accusing anybody in sight. So Bischoff has to be like the voice of reason, like saying, look guys, calm down, this whole thing's getting to us. So anyway, after that, I think we have another in-ring promo, if you will, in-ring segment with Beer Money, and no, actually, I don't know what we had next. I have to check my iPod here, but I think what we had next was Serenghetto and Suicide going one-on-one. Now I can't pronounce the name very well. Serenghetto, whatever his name is. People say it's Amazing Red under the mask. So, anyway, that's what happens basically. Well, basically, I think what we have is the in-ring segment, I believe, between Beer Money and Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy, I guess a week ago, and I did see iMPACT, but a week ago challenged Beer Money to a match for the tag titles of sacrifice with a mystery partner. Well, of course, if you, like I say, you're not a fan that doesn't like reading spoilers and all that, Matt Hardy, at first you would think he's indicating towards bringing Jeff Hardy in, his brother. But we find out it's not Jeff Hardy, and we find out that as everybody's reported over the week, and like I said, if you're someone that doesn't read the reports or anything, or read the spoilers, we find out that it's James Storm's former America's Most Wanted AMW partner, Wildcat Chris Harris. Now, in case you're wondering why Chris Harris looks familiar to you, and you're probably new to TNA, and all you've watched is WWE, and again, like I said, you're probably wondering why Chris Harris looks familiar. Yes, that is indeed ECW's Braden Walker. So, there you go. But yeah, that is Chris Harris. He's back, and there is word going around that probably in the near future, AMW is going to reform. We just don't know when. That's just the news going around. And then next, I think we have the match between Serenghetto and Suicide. I can't pronounce his name really. I can't really pronounce his name. And it was a decent match, and Serenghetto wins. According to some people, like Schleg Daddy, that looks like Amazing Red under there, so because he's small and everything. So we'll see what happens. Then what else happened? Then we had the in-ring segment with Immortal, and as well as Jeff and Karen being in there. And Hogan's calling out the network executive. Well, again, if you haven't read the spoilers and you don't know, the network executive is Mick Foley. Now, a lot of people probably haven't read spoilers, probably would have expected this anyway, because every time, it seems to me that every time a wrestling company does an angle like this, you always have to have a counter to this heel faction. This heel faction, or that. So you got to have somebody that can counter them and have just as much power, if not more so, than they are, or than they do. And we find out that it's Mick Foley. Well, Mick Foley comes out, kind of does a shoot promo, if you will, saying that Impact, this TNA Impact's not going to be about Hogan and Immortal anymore. It's not going to be about the money and stuff like that, or even the I guess even the ratings. I'm not sure. But he says it's not going to be about the politicking, the gamesmanship, the one-upsmanship, the politics and all that. It's going to be focused mainly on wrestling, on the wrestling aspect. So basically, he then announces that TNA Impact, the show, will now be known as Impact Wrestling. And this has kind of confused a lot of fans because nobody really knows what this really means. I mean, at the beginning of last week, about 2 weeks ago when they did the tapings, last week when they did the tapings, Hogan went on his Twitter account and said that it's not TNA, it's Impact. Or Jeff Jarrett goes on a radio show and says it's still TNA, it's just the name of the show has been changed to Impact Wrestling. So kind of a back and forth deal, and then Hogan recently goes on a show this past a couple days ago and says that to him, he'd rather go with Impact instead of keeping TNA, because anytime you go into a board meeting or any kind of business meeting where you want to make a deal, get some sponsorships or something like that, or try to rent out a venue or arena for an event, when you talk about when you go into these meetings and you talk to them and they ask you where do you work for, what wrestling promotion, you say TNA, you basically, in Hogan's mind, you got to correct those people and say no, it's not tits and ass, it's total non-stop action. So anyway, Hogan says that he's just one man in the kitchen, just one of many people in the kitchen that just knows about one thing, that feels one way, but doesn't know how anybody else feels. So and watching the rest of Impact tonight, or Impact Wrestling, it seems that it's still TNA, but there's going to be, as I pretty much thought it would be, it's going to be more emphasis on Impact Wrestling. Kind of like when WWE brought back ECW, they didn't go out and say, oh, it's WWE, ECW. They just put more emphasis on ECW, just the ECW deal. They even went as far as put the ECW logo in the bottom left-hand corner where you would see the WWE logo. So I think that's what TNA is doing. I think it does still TNA, but they're going to have more emphasis on the Impact Wrestling deal, so that now when someone like Hogan or Bischoff or Flair or Dixie or Foley go into a meeting and they ask, well, who do you work for? What promotion do you work for? They can say, instead of saying TNA, they can say, oh, I work for that Impact Wrestling company, say on Spike. So yeah, that's basically what I think it is. There's still TNA, it's just more emphasis on the Impact Wrestling deal on Spike, so that it makes it more well received, instead of just saying, oh, I work for TNA, the TNA program you see on Spike. Because people like Hogan mentioned a couple of days ago on a radio show, may get the wrong idea. So anyway, after that, Foley then announces who Kurt's partner is going to be at Sacrifice against the Jarretts, and lo and behold, it's somebody we haven't seen on the national television wrestling map, if you will, in quite some time. Chyna, Joni Lauren. Chyna is back. She's in TNA. According to some reports, it's only like a handshake kind of deal, so like on a short leash kind of deal. The reason being is she's being approached by Antonio Inoki's IGF promotion in Japan. And yes, this is what Vince McMahon, as I reported and many reported over the past week or so, is furious about. This right here. So anyway, yeah, Chyna is Kurt's partner. She is Kurt's partner. Okay, well, we then get a triple threat match between Crispin, Abyss, and Samoa Joe. Crispin wins the match. Then Abyss starts beating on him. I mean, it looks like Joe's going to attack him, put him in the Kakia clutch. But then Abyss beats him to it, and then Joe walks off like, "Hey, go ahead." And they actually have the announcers agree with Joe's decision that, hey, this is every man for themselves. So and this situation is kind of pissing off a lot of fans. It's like, well, not a lot of fans, but some fans like, well, what they're basically like, well, can you at least finish up the Abyss Christmas thing, then go Christmas Joe? Who knows? Then we get the 25-man battle royal, and with the exception of the 3 we just saw, you got just about the entire roster on there. And now some people, like the Slag Daddy, might say, well, this might be pushing it when it comes to the impact emphasis of wrestling. It's not really pushing it. This is basically what you would see in any kind of wrestling deal. I mean, if they're trying to really push it, kind of push it right in the face of the competition, if you will, of the rival promotion, if you will, the big boys up in Connecticut, if you will, then some people feel that, hey, it's a great deal, great way to do it, and some feel that you're kind of pushing it. It might be a little bit more than what you asked for. But anyway, a decent battle royal, and in the end, Mr. Anderson wins the match. Finally gets his match, and it's going to be a Slammiversary against either Van Dam or Sting. And overall, it was a great. Overall, I thought it was an okay Impact. Thought the build to it was okay. Some things I do agree could have been left for the Sacrifice pay-per-view, like Foley being revealed as the network representative, Chyna coming out as the mystery partner. I think that all could have been saved, but I think the reason they did this is so that so word would get out, if you will. Word can get out of what you're going to see at Sacrifice, who's going to be at Sacrifice. So overall, decent Impact. We did get an additional match. It's going to be Dreamer against Styles, because Dreamer apparently, I guess, is on a deal where he has to work for Immortal and Bully Ray, and I'm guessing it's probably to support his family or save his house or something like that. I'm not really sure. So in the end, decent Impact. I'll give it maybe a 6 out of 10. Could have been better, and again, like I said, they could have saved some of the stuff for the pay-per-view on Sunday, like Chyna and Mick Foley and all that, and Chris Harris. But overall, decent, and that's all I can say. Comment down below if you want to, and I will talk to you all later.